Awesome.
Hello, everybody.
Yay.
This is the coolest demo happening at this time slot, I promise.
This is overflow. It's not.
It's not overflow.
This is the flow.
Thank you for coming. If you have any problems hearing, I know it's loud in here because there's the other sessions happening. There are headsets in the back, so you can actually get your own volume and turn it up manually.
Can I get one?
Keep it low because we talk really loud. So, but if you need that. Welcome to Aspire for Agents. Transform how you build and deploy distributed apps. How many people here think they are building a distributed app? Okay. How many people have a website with a database? Okay, that's a distributed app. So good job, self-identifying. I'm Maddy Montaquila. I am a PM for Aspire.
I'm David, the boss.
He thinks no one's allowed to report to him. That was written out.
It'd be a bad day.
We are going to try and show a lot in 45 minutes, but we have Beth on our team at the booth, and then we'll go back to the booth right over in the Dev Tools and Framework section after this talk for Q&A if people want to come by and get a sticker and say hi. We are here to talk about Aspire. Who has used Aspire? Oh, we got a good room here.
Mm-hmm.
So the slides we're going to try to blow through because we want to mostly do code. The reason I'm going to show the slides, and A, is so that if you watch the recording back, you can pause it, and B, so that you can screenshot them and send them to your coworkers when they ask you what Aspire is, right? Easy peasy. The latest way we've been talking about Aspire is that any modern distributed app, you could pick anything out of any of these boxes. It is confusing, right? The second you go from just one NPM run to NPM run and Docker Compose up, or to NPM run and a .NET run, and you have to make sure the ports are in the right places. Or your agent starts running an NPM run, and then it trips over itself and stops it, and then it's like, oh, the app died. Oh, I have to restart the app. The second any of that starts happening, apps get complicated. And what we do in the dev loop doesn't always translate well to deployment. So when you have something that works on your box, it may work in isolation, but then you try to put it up in a containerized environment or an app service or in a vanilla Kubernetes cluster or your own hand-rolled deployment runtime. And it doesn't work or feel at all the same as it did when you were developing it locally. And that was originally the premise of Aspire. It was twofold. One was to turn on things that we thought you should turn on in an app, which is much less important now because Copilot does that for you or your agent. But the other was to stick together all the individual pieces of your stack so that when you run locally, it feels as close to real life as possible, and you're able to compose and debug that in an actually meaningful way instead of everything in isolation. So the one-liner, Aspire is an agent-ready, code-first tool to compose, debug, and deploy any distributed app.
That's one line.
That's one line. It's almost a run-on sentence, but grammatically it is correct, and it uses an Oxford comma. Thank you very much. I expect that to be used always. If that's, people say, what's Aspire? And we're like, well, I've seen a bunch of people who have been by the booth this week too, just asking what it is. And we're like, it's a tool. It's a tool. It's kind of like a bootstrapper. It's kind of like Docker Compose, replacement, better types. You have to really dive into it to get it. But there's a lot of individual pieces. And what's good to know about Aspire is all of the pieces can be wielded on their own. So we talk about the CLI as the thing that actually runs everything, all the other pieces, but there's this app host file, which is where we're going to spend most of the time today talking about how to build out an app host to be a custom developer experience for your app. There are our integrations, which are how we package up what we think the right way to turn on, run, and connect to resources locally and in the cloud are. And you can totally overwrite those however you need. And then we have a dashboard, which you can run completely in isolation of an app host. You don't need to have a fully Aspire-ified app to use the dashboard. There's a really good demo on the VS Code YouTube right now of using the Aspire dashboard as just a standalone OpenTelemetry viewer to see what your Copilot is doing, because it emits telemetry now. So you can see all the tokens and things it's doing and all the tool calls and turns and there's a lot.
But the best way to onboard your team is to use the dashboard as a viewer, and that becomes the Trojan horse for more stuff.
Yeah.
So
that's how we sneak Aspire into everything. We say one of our main principles for Aspire a lot of times is, how is this different than Pulumi? How is this different than insert cloud IAC thing here? Aspire really is about the developer experience first, and then taking the developer experience and translating that into something that's ops appropriate, ops friendly. So we have never thought, originally when we started building Aspire, we were in no way trying to replace deployment manifests. At this point, the app host has become so mature that you can use the same file to generate manifests and assets to run on whatever deployment runtime you want. I do it. I have apps that a couple hundred people hit every month that are fully just my CI is Aspire deploy.
Your side hustle?
My side hustle. I mean, it's bingo.
Okay.
But it's not good. But the point being, your app host, that one file, becomes a single source of truth for both dev and deploy, and there's no config drift, which is very helpful, especially in this world where we're moving like 1,000,000 miles an hour. Our integrations, we have 110 hosting, we have a lot. The point of Aspire and all of our integrations is that they're all built on the same primitives. So you have access to every single thing that we use to build out custom experiences for Redis or for Azure Container Apps or for Elastic Cache, like insert thing here. Those same primitives are accessible to everyone. So your app host can literally be just like run ls, run grep. And that is a fully valid app host, and everything is built on that. So it's code. It's code. You can comment it out. You can if statement it. You can use launch profiles. I don't care.
We had an Aspire Fridays where the team that built Code Spaces came on, and they turned their random script in the repository into an app host, and it made it super nice and organized.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was so cool. And then this is a screenshot of the dashboard. I'm not going to dissect it here. It's more fun to do it click-clacky. But if you don't know what OpenTelemetry is, OTel, we'll call it OTel for the rest of the day. OpenTelemetry, it's the eminent standard of tracing.
Telemetry, tracing logs, metrics.
Yeah, and it works in container resources, backends, front ends.
Everything.
A lot of stuff. So, and then in the last, I don't know, year-ish, I don't know if anyone's heard of this thing called like AI. It's like around a little bit.
Hold on. Who here has heard about OTel or OpenTelemetry?
OTel?
OTel.
Oh, that's good. That's awesome.
Okay. Who here is using coding agents?
Good. Good answer. Good. If you ask your coding agent to put OTel in your app for you, it will do it in one shot. That works now. So, very exciting. We have spent a lot of time building certain features of Aspire out specifically to optimize your coding agent's interaction with your app, experience, usability. And so what we've done, I think the last like
This is old.
7, 8, 9 months.
It's an old slide. Oh, it's next one.
Is it an old slide? Oh yeah, we have more skills now.
There's more skills.
But this slide is better. What we do with Aspire is we try to give your agent, a deterministic harness on how the app runs and how it all connects to each other. So when you start up a new session, you don't have to, it doesn't grep through all the files and figure out your README and, oh, I need to start this and then I need to start this and just fall over itself. There is a single source of truth for how your app runs and how everything connects to each other that your agent can just, one CLI command.
Inspect it.
And we've built a ton of features into the CLI specific for agents that you can use. They're just CLI calls. But we'll show a little bit, but we do things like we manage your ports for you so that if you're doing multiple agents and multiple work trees, you don't have to deal with everything trying to launch on 3000 or 8080 and them all conflicting. We have a bunch of integrations specifically for getting more information back out to the coding agent. So we'll show you how you can debug a browser and actually get your F12 developer logs into the coding agent without having to take a screenshot and paste it in. There is a whole bunch of stuff we do.
Yep.
But Aspire is really dev first, human first, person sitting, typing, or prompting, or whatever it is now. And then we just try to bring the same experience we give you to coding agents, and on the other side, like to people new to your team coming in and sitting in and onboarding.
Yep.
Make it really easy. So how did I do? Oh my God, I said under 10 minutes.
Pretty good.
Nailed it.
Pretty good.
I nailed it.
Okay, so we're gonna just to give has everyone seen the Aspire site? Wonderful. The docs are updated super often now. We have AI. We actually automate docs, and we humans review them, but every change that goes into Aspire gets sent a PR to the docs repository. So now our docs should be pretty up to date with our product, which is a big win for us because it was not that way in the beginning. So go here, get information. We change Aspire. We ship every 4 weeks. It's 4-ish weeks. And they're big changes, so it's worthwhile if you want to keep up to date with what's going on. Look here to figure out what's new.
Yep.
Right?
Aspire.dev. Easiest thing to remember.
Aspire.dev. That was fun to get, to buy. We shipped 13.4 on Monday at like 3 p.m. and there's a 13.42 now.
Yeah, we serviced
We just shipped 2 patches. Oops, bugs, but whatever. So I will not update in the talk live because that'll be fun, and we'll do it at the end.
Yeah.
But I want to show you the app we have for build. So this idea, we're all about agents now, so agents need to exist. And you can imagine a problem where you have to, you want to book an appointment in your calendar, right? So you do it, you book an appointment, but you want the agent to go off and do really smart things. Like tell me on that day if I should wear like long clothes, like long pants or short pants. Tell me if there's gonna be a conflict. Tell me if I can prep somewhere earlier in the day before the meeting happens. And then for that meeting, if there's an agenda, like tell me why I should prep for the agenda. Right? So I think it's kind of what you would expect coming from like Google or Office. Yeah. We built like a mini version with Aspire, and the thought process was, how would you build that kind of system, right? And it's never one it's never one thing. It's like the web front end, the back end, the agent runs in the background. It has to be secure, runs in the sandbox in a container. So when you're dreaming up this system, you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I snap the parts together? What should exist? What should I build?
Lego bricks.
Yeah.
And you're like, how do I get them to all
play together?
The same thing? Yeah.
So Aspire gives you what you call the Lego base plate.
Yeah, the little
so we give you this system
that you stick them on.
And you can just like front end, back end, agent, and then do this, right? Yeah. So this app host was slopped together perfectly.
The last 48 hours, by the way.
3 days, not 2 days. So I'm going to run Aspire start. So when you use Aspire, you install the CLI. The CLI you get from aspire.dev. If you go on this wonderful site, there's this button here that no one can figure out what it means.
Glenn?
It's a download link.
That's the button you were looking for.
We are, as of yesterday, in winget. So you can winget install aspire.cli. We are going to be in Homebrew pretty soon. We'll figure that out. And we'll be in NPM soon. So you can get it from anywhere. So that should just work. So I have the CLI installed. You can run and help, see all the commands that Maddy loves. So many commands, Maddy.
So many commands.
And then Aspire, AppSire.
AppSire start.
Aspire start runs the app host in the background. This is new. Start happened because as coding agents run these long-running commands, they get confused. Start the command.
Hate blocking processes in the terminal.
So, and some got better at putting it in the background, but for the most part, they're trying to see when the command ends to know when it's done.
Yeah.
So start just kicks off the app host in the background, dumps a bunch of information, and now I can look at my app host, which is an MTS file. Mm-hmm. This is a big change. If you were not paying attention, Aspire supports both C# and TypeScript now.
Yep.
So this
is for the app host.
For the app host
itself. The definition of your app model.
Yep. I mean, we support every language in the actual app host itself, but you can author the app host in C# or TypeScript now in 2026.
2026.
So.
And Aspire Run is the blocking command version of Aspire Start. So we even made shirts that were like Aspire Run. We're so cool.
Exactly.
And then we were like, oh man, we're gonna change that.
Yeah.
But they both exist, so you can use them both.
The benefit is I can kind of see what's on the machine, so I can do Aspire PS and see the running Aspires on my machine.
Yeah.
I can control them, stop them, see the versions. It's kind of a nice way to manage your overall Aspire runs. So I am gonna show the app first, and then we'll talk about the dashboard features and what it gives you.
So what just happened when you did Aspire Start is like a lot of different things.
Right.
Aspire is not a runtime. It is not a something that's going to host your threads. It is literally a process starter and stopper.
Process and other things.
And other things. But if you think about it, everything's on a thread, right? Somewhere, whether that thread's in Docker or not.
Yep.
So what Aspire just did, if you look at his app host, it ran a couple NPM installs. So it found package JSONs. It said, oh, you have dependencies. Let me make sure those are restored. It ran npm run dev and npm run dev with a custom port for the web front end, which is how we handle our port management so that we don't conflict in work trees. It ran
the container image.
Yeah, so it pulled
Postgres and PC Web.
You had the container image because we weren't going to make you watch a Docker pull live.
Yep.
But if he did not have the Postgres container, it would go into Docker or Podman or Rancher and pull the container image and then open it up, make sure that the connection values and strings and everything are good to go.
Yep.
And then it starts everything. Everything has a different way of saying it's healthy or not, or we just take our best guess. It says everything's healthy, cool, thumbs up.
Educated guess.
Educated guess. So let's look at the app.
So the app is a really simple app, and because we have agents now, you can over-engineer all the UI to make it look beautiful. So
To make it look like
beautiful,
built it.
beautiful, beautiful. So I can just like drag on. Oh, this is so nice. I can drag to book a meeting, and I can hit book. So the idea is this: I book a meeting. This is clipped. Oh my gosh,
That's so
I gotta
beautiful.
fix it. Anyway, it's clipped. I book a meeting, and the agent goes off, and it runs this background process, and it will tell me things like I should book my prep time at 10:45, 10 to 10:45. It's gonna be wet in Seattle because it's. I mean, I think this is fixed because it's always raining in Seattle, so it's always wet. So wear a raincoat. Travel time, and then a build checklist. So this is the overall demo. Like you book a meeting, and the agent runs, and it tells you stuff. Right? So very, very simple experience, but behind the scenes, a lot of stuff has to happen to make this all work end to end. So I was making this demo, and I thought to myself, what are some super useful things you would want to do if you were developing? I've lost like my thing. Where's the browser? Oh, here.
Go back, yeah.
I've lost the plot. So the app starts, and I was thinking, what would be useful? So you have an app that has events, and I want to be able to kind of clear the calendar to start over and like play around, right? And that's a useful thing to have in your app, but it's not really part of the app. So what you would do is build an admin UI somewhere in your app or somewhere like on your app, and it would only be for admins, so you'd have auth behind it. The
Or
Aspire
you
dashboard.
Swagger or Scalar or something and just like raw hit the endpoint.
Hit the endpoints directly.
Yeah, it's always fun.
But for these admin things that aren't part of your app, you can put it somewhere else. So the Aspire dashboard has a way for you to author commands. And commands show up on individual resources. Each one of these is a resource, a container, a process, all these things.
Scroll, two-finger scroll.
No, it's like that's different. You don't want the zoom?
No, I want the nice zoom.
You want this zoom.
Control, two-finger
this
scroll. That zoom. See how nice that is? It zooms.
What's better? Yeah, okay. So I added two commands. One is to make a random calendar, and the other one is to clear the calendar. So I can just click on this, ask for a confirmation, clear the calendar, and in my app, now they're all gone, right? No more events. Pretty cool. And then I can generate a calendar based on build or based on something random. This is like database seeding. So y'all have a script, npm script or a sh script or a cmd script that is like, run this giant bash file that no one keeps up to date. It's always stale, never works. New dev joins your team. They run the command, it fails, and their README is out of date because no one takes care of it, right? That can be part of your app. It can be part of the thing that you run, so it's always working. So the goal here is to let you express behavior for individual apps and your projects in the app host. So I can seed with like build information. It should show me a bunch of events now that are like buildy, whatever that means. And this UI is driven by code in the app host. So if I go to the app host,
Nope.
What?
We need to show people the dashboard. We have not even
Which
shown
dashboard?
This dashboard.
Oh, we have the features of the dashboard.
Yeah. So the dashboard. This is the Aspire dashboard. I know a lot of you are familiar or already using Aspire, but for those of you at home who haven't, there are a lot of things here. It is a really good command center for your app.
Yep.
And like Fowler said, it's all driven from this app host. It's all driven from one file.
Code.
What we do is we just show it to you in ways that are useful. So the best example, like click on a resource row here. We know everything about this resource. We know the thread it's running on. We know where it's running from. We know what process it is, but if you keep scrolling, we also are able to keep going, keep going, keep going. We are able to actually see and manage all of the config that's been injected to it, mostly through environment variables, right? So in the case of a front end, the number one thing you need in there is your backend URL.
Yep.
And a lot of times you just hard code it and you say my backend runs on 8080 and that's that. But then your work tree throws up. And so what we do is we actually are just using environment variables to override common config. It's really not magic. It feels a little bit magical.
So team appreciation.
It's amazing.
The amount of stuff we made work. So for example, this is running on HTTPS.
It's using dev certs.
Create certificates. We have to inject certificates for every language, for Node, and they're all different. So each of these integrations, they add Node.js, they add C#, they all encapsulate behaviors for build, debug, dev, deploy for that thing. For Next, for 𝗬𝗎𝗀𝗀𝗀, for Python. And you can encapsulate those behaviors in an integration, and they appear as these things. So this looks pretty simple. It's like you call it a single line like add Node.js app, but it had to inject the OTel config for that specific language. It had to inject the certs for that language. It had to inject the Node environment. This is a like Node specific value, and in .NET it's different. So we have to understand each language, each integration, and then kind of explain how to convert the Aspire behaviors into that language.
Yeah.
So
the reason I always bring this up is just because a lot of people are like, what magic runtime are you using? And we're like, we're not, we're just sticking environment variables in the right place. We just have really smart people who know which environment variables need to be set and when.
Exactly.
So it's yeah. So if you go to the traces tab on the side, so this app is instrumented with OpenTelemetry. It's gonna pull like every second. It's really annoying. If you hit the pause button up top to pause collecting traces.
You can pause.
You can pause. It's very nice.
So nice.
So OpenTelemetry, like we said, standard for viewing and traces, metrics, and structured logs.
Yep.
So we have a console log viewer. So all your console logs, instead of being between 7 different terminals or 7 different background tasks in a coding agent, we can consolidate that all here in the dashboard, and then you can filter by resource, of course. You can download all of these and export them, by the way. So when something's really broken, you just download the logs, and then you send the whole log stream to your team, and you say, why is this broken, guys?
You do it here and export the logs and traces and metrics.
Yeah, there's a lot of buttons. But the traces, there are a lot of buttons.
A lot of buttons.
The traces, if you click into one of these, we have a full end-to-end trace of when Fowler clicks on a button, or when we pull the database, or when the agent asks if there's been any changes or anything. You can see this is just a 204 from the worker, which is where the agent runs, into the API, which then hits the Postgres database.
Yep.
And you can use this to not only debug your flows and see what's going on, but you can also use this to actually profile your app.
Performance, yep.
Performance-wise. So this is a really good way to be like, why does this call take so long? Oh, it's because it's calling the database 17 times. Like, we could probably streamline that.
And this is cool for humans. So like the dashboard, the visuals.
If you go back to the resources tab,
yep,
and you open a browser.
Open a browser.
Down, scroll. There is a way, and we'll show this how we did this in code, to annotate web front-end resources as well, with the ability to open them in a tracked debuggable browser, which means that the logs from your F12 can come back into this dashboard and whatever other place you're exporting. So if you use something like Grafana or Prometheus or whatever, Honeycomb, if you use those for local dev, you can have Aspire also, Seek is one, you see? Yeah. You can have Aspire export to the Aspire dashboard as kind of the control plane of the actual app, and also those tools if you have really built-in reporting and if you're advanced with OTel. So
the theme is just that if you can visualize all the parts of your app, if you can see connections between the front end, the client app, and the browser, the back end, the database, yeah, and you can drag this around for fun for hours.
Yes.
The graph. It makes it easier to debug these more complex apps. Right. If you have a single app, it's a static file, or a database on disk, maybe you don't need Aspire because it's not doing enough for you. But the moment you build anything more real that requires a database or a cache or anything like a front end and back end, this becomes like invaluable, right? How many times we've been on stream when the front end is buggy or it works for 5 minutes locally, then you deploy it, then it's broken, and just having the end-to-end trace, having the end-to-end logs between client and server, it not only helps us, but it helps agents. So that we made a big change in 13.0 where we said everything in the dashboard must be visible to agents.
Yep.
So this is just UI over an API, and the API has to be exposed to both the CLI and the dashboard. So now, in 13.4 and beyond, the agent can do the same things humans can do. So if you said to Copilot or Claude or whatever else, hey, tell me when the app is slow, it'll open up Aspire, the command line, Aspire run, Aspire OTel, and it will get traces, export them, analyze, look at the code, make changes, rerun, trace again in this loop. And you can kind of optimize a bunch of things. So as a fun story, for 13.4, I was trying to profile why Aspire Start was so slow for .NET apps. And I instrumented the CLI, the dashboard, the orchestrator, the RPC. So there's we run like 5 things when Aspire Start happens, right? And I added it everywhere. And then I added a command that booted the dashboard, ran the thing, got all the traces, and the agent just read it in a loop and optimized like 4 parts of it. Super incredible. So once you start giving the agent information, Aspire helps you close the loop.
We call it giving the agent eyes or senses or whatever it is.
Give it eyes, yeah.
So flip back. Let's look at the app host. So Fowler mentioned this. Right now you can orchestrate, you can author the app host, the orchestrator in TypeScript or C#, Python, Java, Go coming soon. God knows what's next.
Rust.
But the way that Aspire works the way that you build out your app host, your app model, is with a set of resources. So a resource is the individual line of a thing that shows up in the dashboard.
So add the app is one resource.
That's one resource. Sometimes it has children resources it brings into, like
Yeah.
will bring in the npm installer.
Yep.
By default, you can switch it to pnpm. Like, yes, it works with that. Like, stop asking us, does it work with this? Yes, it is. It is just.
You can ask us still.
You can ask us, but I'm going to say yes, just for the record.
It works.
And integrations are our opinions on the right way to turn on a Vite app and to run it. So there's the dev certs, the OTel environment injection. There, in this case, we're overriding the port variable for you so that we can manage the port and not Vite.
And just to appreciate how easy and difficult some of these things are, if you want to enable HTTPS in Vite or Redis, like that is a whole day of work or a week of work just to figure out how to configure it for that one thing. And then when you want to connect that thing to a separate thing, there's like 4 weeks of work. So take that to everything that you have in your app. I want a Postgres, a front end. So you're using like 4 different technologies because every app now has 4 different things, right? And you're trying to make sense of it. And the app host helps you reason about all the parts, how they connect, how they pass data across each other, and then how calls work at runtime.
Right.
So we're trying to give you a model for expressing that overall intent, right?
So we give you a lot of basically methods that you add on to your builder, to these resources that let you define the model of your app, how things relate to each other, and in what order.
Yeah.
And what can access what. So the web app here, the Vite app, it is waiting for the API to start and report healthy or 200 before it starts. And then it knows the API exists. It has that reference. So that's passed in as API under HTTP underscore HTTP is what was in there.
And if you look here, like you don't see any port numbers, right? That's key. So this thing is saying add a Vite app with the compute environment ACA, set the environment variable API-based URL, but get the endpoint from the API reference. This is how you this is passing in a specific endpoint called HTTP from the backend to the front end. And this is important because when it resolves locally, it is some localhost address that's random. When you deploy it, when you go somewhere else, when you change the environment, you have a reference to the endpoint. You don't have like the value. You don't have hardcode port 8000. You don't have the HTTPS or HTTP port. And we spent so many hours like trying to figure out how to go from like local environment working well, you're super happy. You deploy it to Azure somewhere in Azure or somewhere remotely, and the endpoints change, or HTTPS isn't on, or HTTP is on. So we handle that for you. We handle, if you use references, if you use our model, we will do the work to kind of like figure out in that environment, what are all the quirks? Yep. How do you manage HTTPS in this environment? How do you configure structures in that environment? And we do all the mapping to turn this super simple looking model into like, if you want this to work in that environment, turns out you have set this environment very well, these 5 things. So it's this like master configurator for your like dev app, right?
So scroll through this a little bit because there's a lot in this app host. We'll talk a bit about Foundry. No,
can you see all?
God, you give me heartburn. Yeah, go back to the top. Let's see what we have here. We're doing a bunch. This is a chunky app host, but the first thing in here is just turning on the database. So this is builder.add Postgres. Postgres is an integration that we have that pulls down the Postgres database image. You could add on to that. Oh, you have it with PG Web, which adds the Postgres web viewer for the database. You could do something like with Postgres MCP.
Yes.
Where we will wire up the MCP for you now. You can define that in here, so you don't have to pull and install the MCP on your own anymore. We'll give it the ports that it's running on and whatever with MCP.
Where's this thing?
With MCP? MZP?
With MCP server.
Oh, sorry. I don't know what the command is called. I thought it was MCP.
IntelliSense, bad IntelliSense.
Bad IntelliSense. Yeah, I'm terrible IntelliSense.
You're bad IntelliSense.
We're checking in some environment variables here. We're saying, hey, is this running in this mode? Should we enable inference with the Copilot SDK here or not? We're processing environment variables to kind of determine the run mode. What's cool about environment variables, if you use the built-in Aspire parameters, is what we call like strongly resourced environment variables that you define in the app host. You can set and unset and change those within the dashboard or over the CLI.
I should do that, shouldn't I?
You should do that.
Okay, let me do it.
So
I'm going to set this environment variable.
What? No, go into the.
Yeah.
Go into the dashboard.
What?
Oh.
Let's go all the way.
You misspelled inference.
Did I?
Inference. There you go.
No, this
and Aspire, stop.
Just this. It'll work, right?
I don't know. I don't know if this is going to work.
Probably.
Okay.
Hopefully. Keep going.
So, did it work?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good.
Of course.
Good. Okay. So what that just did was turned on a whole new resource that's defined in the app host. That's Microsoft Foundry. So Foundry is
our agent paths, our agent platform.
Agent paths, yeah. I think everyone's probably heard about it.
Has anyone here used Foundry?
Any Foundry?
Azure Foundry is.
Oh, nice.
Microsoft Foundry is
you
brand
can go
new.
bother Glenn with your issues after.
In the back, yeah.
He's shaking his head. He's in the scally cap. So just argue with him. What we do with Foundry is at dev time, if you are authenticated anywhere on your machine with Azure, whether that's the Azure CLI or VS Code or AZD, what we do is say, hey, we know that you have an Azure account. Would you like us to provision a resource for you to develop against? So the dashboard pops it. This comes in as part of our Foundry integration. The dashboard's going to pop it and say, hey, I need resources for your Azure subscription. So if you hit enter values.
This happens for any Azure resource, not just Foundry.
Yes, any Azure resource. You can also build this experience out for anything.
Super important. So
super important.
This is not in Aspire.
This is
Aspire
in a package.
That lets you pop dialogues and show all these fancy UI. This is in the specific Azure, like the Azure-based libraries. It says, I need auth to do anything in Azure.
Yep.
And it says, I'm going to query the Azure CLI on your machine,
yep.
find your application, and then show you a dialog that you log in to Azure. So normally when you're doing this, you have a README somewhere in your apps that's out of date.
And a .env.
And a .env. And then some dev joined your team, and then they have to figure out where the creds are. How do you enter my credentials for my subscription? Or
they have to go
or
into
maybe
the
it's
Azure
shared.
portal.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have to find the dev sub. They have to copy paste the subscription ID. And then they have to go and put that in env.
Put it in env.
And then they have to go back and they have to get the tenant ID, and then they have to put that in env.
Exactly.
And then they have to figure out if they want to make a new resource group, they have to do that manually, or they have to, God forbid, use the AZ CLI to do it by hand. That's terrifying.
Yep.
The AZ CLI now exists solely for Copilot. I will never use it again. Never again. Too many commands. We're picking Swede and Central because that's where we know the model will probably deploy and run right now because the Swedes are asleep.
Woo. So this is cool because it does a lot of things. It is going to provision the resource in Azure. This model is very much each dev gets their own subscription to be a sandbox. You aren't sharing resources. I can imagine a model where you want to share the same subscription, but you want to have different resource names to avoid conflicts. But we heard from developers that one big source of pain is like, I'm sharing a subscription with my team, and we conflict on the same thing in Azure all the time. So how do you make it so each dev gets their own play space, and they don't have to worry about connection strings or going to the portal or figuring out how to grab the right URL to put into their app once they have it provisioned?
Yeah.
This experience just says, add a Foundry resource with reference, passing the value of the Foundry resource to my app, and then we populate the data in your environment to make that just work. So we're doing the things you do already. We just codify those as patterns. So you don't have to think about, okay, let me go here, copy and paste that value, put it in a secret file, do it over here. Yeah. It just codifies the entire experience into this model.
Yeah, so with Aspire, you're able to clone and run an app with provisioned resources, whether they're in Azure or wherever, or just external endpoints somewhere, without having to open any portals. There's no ClickOps involved in getting it set up. The ClickOps are clicking in the dashboard to click your thing. You can also have the agent do it. The agent's able to set parameters and secrets like that. So what's cool about our parameter system is we don't save it in your environment. We don't do a .env file. We actually put it in your user profile. So it is unique per work tree, which means you can test against different subs and different work trees. But more importantly, you cannot accidentally commit it to source, which is a big issue right now with Copilot. It's gotten a lot better at it.
You can read the env.
But for a while, if you didn't ignore things the right way, people were pushing tokens up left and right. It was a whole thing.
They still do.
This is also for Azure resources. I know at Build we have a lot of Azure people who are actually real ops people. So you see stuff like this and you're like, that'll never work in my enterprise environment. Blah, blah, blah. We've worked with all the Azure teams for the integrations we have. And AWS is an integration for us. We have vanilla Kubernetes, we have vanilla Docker Compose. It's not vendor locked to Azure, but we work for Microsoft, so we did spend a lot of time talking to our friends on the Azure team. We're not only provisioning the resource group and the Foundry project and deploying a model, but we're also provisioning roles so that only the correct things inside of my app host can talk to that resource. So I am doing security things now at this point. I'm saying the front end is what knows about Foundry. So that role gets now assigned to that resource in Azure, meaning I can't have some random person come in and hit this from the internet.
Funny story, it's so secure, I couldn't do it myself. So the app could talk to my agent, but I couldn't see it.
Yes, it is very funny. Okay,
Good rules.
let's talk about how to transition all of this into deployment. While this is deploying, because we'll show the demo with the agent after. It takes about 5 to 7 minutes, depending on conference Wi-Fi.
So we didn't show the web browser logs. We spoke about it, but I think it's worthwhile showing you how it works. So like when you add there's a piece of code in your app that is this with browser logs method. This is new. It's an integration. It's in a Spire hosting browser, and when you add it to a resource, it will open up the track browser with the debug port, and it will scrape. It'll ask for logs from the console and network requests. So you can imagine how annoying it is to debug like client-side failures. You're always like in your app, in a terminal trying to debug your thing, and then you're in the browser F12 in this like little cramped space.
Cores everywhere.
And cores doesn't work and you're super unhappy. So this resource is added to that project, and I can launch this little track browser thing, and it spawned the browser, and it looks normal. But what's happening behind the scenes is I open up this log panel, you can see the network traffic and the console debug logs. So this is just showing Vite output, and it's showing all the requests from the client. You can use this to debug your entire stack, your full stack, right? Your like client to backend to database, entire thing. The beauty of this thing is that the agent has the same information. So if I now go into my console and I were to run Aspire logs, it can dump the same information. So the agent can just use this. And it can search, so I can do a Spire log search, like, I don't know, bug, whatever. I'm gonna find things, but in general, you can search logs, you can search traces, you can search all the information, all that information in the dashboard. In the model, it's exposed to the CLI for agents and the dashboard. So
do you have an agent open anywhere?
I have lots of agents. So here's an app where Maddy was telling me I should add another language for fun, because why not, just for a talk. So I told the agent, like, tell me what I should add, and it added Python for some reason. No hate, I love Python. And it added the Python app to my application. And has anyone here used the GitHub app? It's brand new.
It's awesome.
It came out, I think, like last week.
Oh.
And it became available today.
Yes.
So if you don't have it, here's a preview of what it is. On the left, there's sessions. This is my demo app. I have a bunch of different things that I made work before this talk. And they were all in work trees. So each one of these is a unique work tree. And the benefit of using Aspire with agents here is that I have this there's this run button, and I have this configured script. The GitHub app lets you configure scripts to run an app, and it can do whatever. But what it can do is you can say whenever you start a workspace or start an app, run the app host isolated. Isolated. That says, take all the ports that I had in my application and randomize them. Make sure there's no conflicts. Because when I want to run many sessions, I don't want port conflicts across work trees. Any state that I had that were secrets for my dev environment, make a unique one per work tree.
Yep.
So it does that, and then on stop, it'll delete the work tree, and it will get rid of the app host, so it will tear it down. That lets me preview multiple app hosts in parallel while working in the same like source tree. Right?
And if you scroll up in here, did it use any Aspire commands that we can look at in this session? I don't know. We have a set of skills that we give you now with Aspire. So just straight up the CLI, like we don't even need an MCP or anything. We do have an MCP, but you don't need it. You can just use skills.
Yeah, so
if you run Aspire agent init, if you're already using Aspire, that gives you the option to add or update or add the new Aspire skills. We have a whole repo of them. They do a whole bunch of things. Like one of them is literally just the right way for the agent to monitor the app. One of them is how to wield custom commands and resources. So if the agent wants to seed my database, and knows how to search what custom commands are available and use them.
Exactly.
And one of them is wait. That's a great one. Wait for this thing to happen or be healthy or be successful. So you don't have to have the agent go, okay, I'm going to sleep for 120 seconds, BRB.
Can probably show.
There's a lot of stuff going on.
There's a lot of stuff here, so I'll just.
But anyways, you can ask, like if you ask the agent or the one that's
here it is.
Yeah.
So I told it to check the logs, and it's looking at the skill to monitor the app. Found the skill, and it's going to start running commands like Aspire logs, Aspire all these things to figure out what's going on. And The app is pretty cool. The app can actually launch a browser in the terminal to kind of see the browser and do things with it. But yeah, so Aspire is agent ready. I would say it's optimized for agents, so you can use it to kind of performance profile, look at logs, do development, and it helps you like completely close the overall loop, agent loop.
Okay, go back to the app
Deployment.
because we need to talk about deployment.
All right, so
4 minutes.
I am like lost, but it's here.
Okay, so at the very top of this, I believe, yes. So what we did, this is deployed to an Azure Container App environment. We pulled in add Azure Container App environment, which is also an integration, same building block, but this one's specific for deployment. And so each of these individual resources know how to generate themselves into a Docker file or whatever the deployable asset that makes sense for them is. What Azure Container Apps environment integration does is how to take those things and translate them into Bicep or YAML or whatever or Helm charts. I don't know, name your integration here. And how to overwrite properties on that so you don't actually have to manually hand edit Bicep ever. So if you run Aspire publish, Fowler pre-deployed this because we weren't going to wait for it. So if you run Aspire deploy, it will generate assets. It will use whatever the correct thing for the runtime based on that integration is to deploy it to the cloud, to a container apps environment, connect things together, make sure everything is seeded correctly. Oh, what did you do?
In theory, it works.
In theory, it works?
Did I add more things to it?
Did you break something?
Yeah.
Open a different work tree, I don't know.
It's good.
Yeah. But you can also do something Aspire publish. We kind of give you escape hatches along the way for deployment.
We do.
Because it really depends if this is a greenfield app, if this is an app that has a really advanced DevOps team, like your DevOps people or the DevOps people here do not want you just black box running a single Aspire deploy and them having no idea what's actually happening.
Not in production, but for ephemeral environments, it makes sense for dev to have an environment you can spin up, see the entire thing working, but then when you promote, you want like more lockdown, more rules, more whatever else, right? But Aspire is really good for those stages. Or if you're a smaller team or a smaller apps, you can do the entire end-to-end with Aspire.
Yeah. And you can overwrite things. Are you, is it gonna work now?
No.
No, he says.
No, it failed before.
It should be fine. It should be fine. Okay, well, just go into the code because I want to show customizing, configuring it.
I see what happened.
Oh, so if you go into like the front end.
The front end?
I'd go to a resource.
So one example is that we're setting the capacity SKU for a Foundry resource. When you add a Foundry project or deployment, we're adding a GPT-5 mini model, and when deploying, it will set the capacity to 10, whatever it is. I think it means like 10 times something, but we exposed the entire Bicep object model. This is not our team, the Azure SDK team actually built this. We expressed the Bicep model in your language, so C# or TypeScript, and you can mutate all the properties you want to mutate. We don't lock it down. We give you defaults, and then your job is to customize it and do more things from there.
Right. So then you can create the correct Bicep for your use case. And what's really nice about this is you can literally do await chat dot and then just scroll through all of the things. Like everything that you get on your container app resource or your app service or your Helm resource. So this is deployed. To
show the deployed version before we land, this is deployed in Azure Container Apps for the front end, and the back end for the agent. Actually, there's a front end website, there's a back end worker process in Azure Container Apps, and there's an agent container sandbox in hosted agents. So there's a bunch of different Azure resources hosted in different places. In Foundry, you can see I have 2 agents here hanging out. So this system is like spread across multiple platforms, multiple compute environments. Doing that is completely non-trivial by default because you have to span not only ACA, but like Foundry hosted service. And the way Aspire makes that easier is you can kind of say in Aspire, my front end and my application can be in ACA. This is with compute environment. So I'm saying, take my API resource and the worker and the front end, put it in ACA, but I want the sandboxes to be in the hosted agent service because it's secure, and I can spin up one on the fly and have it go away. I can have my coding agent, crap on disk and then not worry about messing with other customers' information.
Right.
So I'm kind of building that design with Aspire, and it becomes like pretty trivial to do.
Yeah. The online stream cuts off in exactly 15 seconds, so that's why I'm switching back to the slides.
Yep.
Aspire.dev is where everything is. Join our Discord. Join us most Fridays. We live stream to YouTube. please fill out the session evaluation and get some details. The sample code for this app will be uploaded tonight.
Yep.
And then for those of you in the room, I nailed that timing. That was pretty good, right? For those of you in the, I can chill now because the stream's offline. For those of you in the room, we're going to go hang out at the booth for the rest of the afternoon or until one of us falls over. So
Immediately,
yeah. So we're more than happy to talk. We would love to hear if you're using Aspire already, how you're using it, what has been easy to sell people on your team on, what's been hard. The best way to learn what Aspire is to use it or to show it. And so it does make it hard to explain what it is. But we're really working on arming our fans, the people who are using it and get it, and our contributors, with the tools to help people explain, and use it. Because once you use it, you're never going to be able to go back. I promise you. Like the Chris Reddington, who did all the setup for the machines in the dev tools and frameworks area, he said that he only just used it for the first time 2 weeks ago because we made him install it on everything. And since then, he has not been able to create a project without it. He won't stop using it. So anecdotally, like, you will get hooked, and we're going to make it easy for you to get hooked even further. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
No, it works.